Welcome to the Reticle Up Podcast, where I, 3-Gun Kenzie, will be interviewing competitive shooters, hunters, fishermen, archers, entrepreneurs, and outdoorsmen. Come learn with me as I interview people from all walks of life, in different disciplines, all across the world, from novices to professionals of all ages. No matter what, everyone has something they can teach you, so come join me on the journey. Welcome back to the Reticle Up Podcast, everyone. I'm really excited for this episode. I've got Scott Volquartsen. He is the CEO of Volquartsen Firearms, which you will know if you're anywhere in rimfire, challenge, or anything like that. So I'm really excited to have you on, Scott. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I kind of want to kick it off with, for people that don't know, how did the company get started? And what did that look like till you and your brother came on board?
So my dad started the company as a hobby back in the mid 70s. And it just came from, he was a young dad with several kids, didn't have any money to fix up his guns, but he always wanted something nicer. Mm-hmm. So he had to figure out, how can I do this? And it just kind of evolved where he started off doing general gunsmithing. He did rebluing, refinishing, basically everything that could kind of help support his shooting and his hunting.
Yeah.
And then in 1984, I believe, or 1986, excuse me, is when he finally went full-time into the gun business. Prior to that, he was doing it on the side, and he worked as a tax collector for the state of Iowa, which he absolutely hated with everything he had. He despised it.
Yep, I can see that.
So it got to the point, he's like, if it doesn't work out in the gun business, I don't want to do that anymore anyway. Yeah. So I'll figure it out at that point. Very neat.
And so all self-taught for this whole company. Like he didn't go get an engineering degree or take a class. Like this is all him.
The only college degrees he had, it was business, and then he took some art classes.
Okay. So why the art?
I don't know. He was always very artistic and very creative, which I think served him very well when he started doing some of the innovative stuff with the designs. Yeah. That hadn't necessarily been done on certain firearms. Even with some of the colors and different things, he was at the forefront of that. Mm-hmm. But I think, he was completely self-taught. And I always marvel at not only him, but a lot of other people in that space, because there was no YouTube, there was no Google to go look up and say, how do you do this? How do you do that? They had to do it from trial and error. And he was very fortunate too. He had people he could call that he had met that would help guide him a little bit. But, it was a completely different time to learn the craft. So he did that for up until the early 90s. He just did everything. I mean, he built pin guns. He built high power rifles. He would do gunsmithing. But he never really wanted to expand outside the family.
Okay.
So he was limited on how much he could do. So in the early 90s, he's like, I got to find a niche that I can get into. Mm-hmm. And that's when he decided rimfires were his thing.
Okay.
So he started doing that. And at that time, nobody else outside of maybe Jim Clark was doing much for the Ruger 1022 or the Ruger at the time, Mark I and Mark II.
Yeah.
So he went to several distributors with some ideas he had, and for lack of a better term, they basically laughed at him and said, nobody's ever going to spend that for a barrel for a 1022.
Oh, how have times changed?
Yeah. And, and it's probably hard for some of the younger people to even fathom that there was a time before the 1022 was so customized and so many different parts.
Right.
So we always laugh that, lucky for us, he was very stubborn. And the more that people told him he couldn't do something, the more he was going to try to prove them wrong.
That's me. Yep.
Yeah.
Love it. Just tell me more. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so he kind of really narrowed his focus of doing just rimfires. Cool. And then in the mid 90s is when I graduated. I had a tool and die degree, but he never did.
Okay.
And I came back to work for him. And then in 2000, my brother got a tool and die degree and he came back. But up until that point, Dad he was very paranoid. He did not want to teach anybody else outside of the family what we did. And so about mid 2000s, he was ready to kind of step away. I think he had burned himself out.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the downside of doing everything yourself is, he would be in the shop doing the manufacturing or the assembly or all that stuff all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it was the packaging, the invoicing.
Business. Yeah.
And eventually, yes. And eventually my mom would come and help.
Yep.
But that wasn't until like the late 80s. And by that point, they had gotten pretty busy. So they were both, working day and night.
Yeah. Yep.
But for us, it was also the perfect time because manufacturing was going it had already done it, but even becoming more critical that you were moving to CNC. Everything was becoming 3D modeling, like through SolidWorks and different things.
Mm-hmm.
And then from a marketing standpoint, it had started, in the late 90s for us. Mm-hmm. But everything was going to websites and starting digital marketing. And I'll never forget the argument of trying to sell Dad on a website. I think we paid
done this way. Yeah.
Yes. I think in the late 90s, we paid like $3,000 for a website, which if you go back and ever look at it, it's just awful.
People don't know that there's Google Archives where you can see all of that. Yes.
Save yourself the time. Don't go look at it.
Look at it. That's how I feel about my first podcast.
So it was a good transition time or timing period as things were shifting for us to be able to move into more digital marketing. Mm-hmm. And as we started to grow, we had to start adding people because part of what we saw is when Dad did everything himself, yes, he was able to completely control quality, which is still very important to us. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when he went on vacation, nothing got done.
Right.
So there was, we grew up with that we took very few vacations just for that reason, because he always felt bad because he was so far behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Which now, people come to understand there's people on wait lists for any firearms for years.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. So did you and your brother kind of work with him on the digital and the website? Like, did you teach yourself all of that?
The website we hired a third party to do.
Okay.
I've always enjoyed the computer side of things, mm-hmm. which was perfect for like the CNC programming and different things. But he gave us a lot of free reign outside of the budget part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of free reign because he didn't really grasp what was going to be going on with that. He does now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was very open to trying things.
Okay.
He just wasn't going to sit down and figure out what had to happen for a website to be developed and what we're going to put on there and pictures and everything that way.
Right. Right. Now, did y'all patent any designs or anything like that?
No. And he had a guy that he talked to a long time ago that gave him some advice that said, if you come out with something very innovative, something new, spend that patent money. And there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me on this. So
I like it.
But, spend all that patent money on being the first one to market.
Yeah.
And this gentleman's reasoning, I'm not going to give his name, that he said that was, if the big companies want to try and get around that patent or even infringe upon that, as a one-man shop back then, Dad was never going to have the capital to go to court and defend that.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So we've always kind of stuck by that, and like I said, we have a patent attorney that we've run things by and done different things. And he would obviously like to see us patent a lot more ideas that we've had.
I'm sure.
But it's for those that don't know, getting a patent is a very time-consuming and expensive process. And just because you receive that patent doesn't mean it's necessarily valid if somebody challenges it.
Right.
If they can prove that it's been done before or a variation of it, it becomes a very difficult thing to enforce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Now, yeah, and I feel like Volquartsen, when you guys have positioned yourself as a luxury 22, a luxury rimfire, something that's going to be passed down and cherished and customized. And I don't know any other 22s and that are at that level. You're like the 2011s of rimfires, I guess. And
I thank you, first of all.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, but that has always been our goal.
Yeah.
And that's something that I will give my dad a lot of credit for, that he kind of ingrained into us. Mm-hmm. Was even back when you didn't have the internet to go look at or different things, he would sit down at night and browse through, like, let's say a Brownell's catalog or whatever the catalog was at the time, to make sure he was making the best parts available for a 22.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
And to this day, we'll get times somebody will say, why don't you copy, or why don't you make your version of like this part or that part? Mm-hmm. And we'll simply say, they've already done it. They've made that part.
Yep.
That's not, we don't want to copy. We want to innovate. And if we can't improve upon it, we're not going to make it just because it's a popular item.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's helped us too, because it allows us to stay very friendly with a lot of what people would think are our competitors.
Right.
And that's always been very important to us too, because as you know, it's such a small industry.
Yep.
You're going to be on a range with your competitors.
Yep.
You're going to be at a show with your competitors. It's so much easier to get along and promote each other's products.
Yep. Yep. I think competition is something that nobody really appreciates. And like you said, I have seen builders where they just go build their own and they end up, I would say, regretting it probably, because I'm like, I really like what you originally did using somebody else's parts, and now it's not the best, right?
Yes. So that's always been our model is, and it, part of it too, that's why some of our stuff is, it's no secret, it's some of the most expensive rimfire stuff out there too. Mm-hmm. But I just had a conversation with a guy the other day. He said, what separates yours from somebody else's? And I said, it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
It's all the little details that we've learned over the last 30 years of doing just rimfires.
Yeah.
Maybe a finish here, maybe just something very small here, mm-hmm. but you put it all together in a package and all that stuff adds up.
Yeah, it does.
From a cost standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, and I do like brands that don't like sway on being like the cheapest. I tell people that all the time, like, you don't have to be the cheapest, right? Or like, you don't have to offer everyone a deal or a special. Like, I own my craft. I am what I cost, and that's what I cost, right? And that's what I really like about Volquartsen too, because sometimes that waters down the brand, right? And if you discount or this person does, everybody goes down, right? Just because it's rimfire, it's like, no, there's still luxury good rimfires out there.
Yes, and we've had people that say, why don't you make like an entry level or an economy 22? And we could do that, but the downside is, I feel like that would eventually bleed into all areas of our business. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, is our team, are they separating the so-called economy one from the high-end one?
Yeah.
Or is it just all one model?
Yep.
100%. And all of a sudden, I'm a big fan of how you do one thing is it can show you how you do everything.
100%.
And if you take shortcuts one place, it's going to start showing up in other places of stuff that we build.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that I've always told our team too is when our stuff is expensive, mm-hmm. we have a standard that we have to live up to.
Right. Yep.
That in the back of our mind, we know that people are paying their hard-earned money. And when they buy our stuff, they think they're buying, top level equipment.
Yeah.
And if we don't live up to that standard, we're letting them down.
Their circle, it's kind of their family, their friends. It's
Yes.
Yeah.
And even with all the social media and all that stuff, I still feel like word of mouth is the number one form of marketing and advertising.
I agree.
There's nothing that somebody shooting a gun or whatever it might be on a range with their friend saying, you got to try this.
Yep.
There's nothing we can do from a marketing side that will beat that.
No. Okay. I got to ask you this because I love this. Do you get like a thrill when you have somebody like maybe gun shy or maybe new to shooting and you hand them your gun and then their face just completely changes? Like, what is that feeling like as an entrepreneur when that happens with your firearm?
It's why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's nothing better, at least for me, than we're at a range and without stereotyping, this is the way it usually works. It's a guy that is bringing his girlfriend or wife maybe, and she's like, I don't want to shoot.
Yeah.
And it's maybe she's tried something
like a shotgun.
That had a little more recoil, a little louder.
Yeah.
And then we have to almost sell them on the fact there's not going to be any recoil. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be overly loud. And then when they shoot it and that smile creeps across their face and they'll look and they're like, well, that I can do.
Yeah. Yep.
And, part of the reason I love that is not just for our product, mm-hmm. but for the industry too.
100%. Yeah.
Because that's their gateway.
Yeah. The gateway drug.
Yes. Because all of they've learned that these guns they thought might be big, bad, and scary aren't. And then as they've developed better mechanics and they become more accustomed to shooting, all of a sudden you'll see them. Well, maybe I do want to try a 9 or whatever it is.
Yep. Yeah.
But when you start them at the other end and they're already intimidated, it's tough to sometimes get them to go back and try a 22.
Yeah, I've had to do that. I've had a lot of girls with 45s and 12 gauges as their first guns. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. Like, of course you don't want to shoot. I get it.
Yeah. And I think that unfortunately comes down to too many times as men, our egos get in the way.
Yeah.
We want to show them what we can do.
Yeah.
Instead of showing them or letting them do what they can do right now.
Right. Now I want to ask you this too. Like I know the competition industry, and that's where I live and breathe, obviously, is a small piece of your business. And I think a lot of people don't see outside of the industry. Like, what are your other markets that we don't even know about? Like, who's your biggest segments, not just in the competition world with your guns?
So we do stuff with like 17 HMR and 22 mags. So there's like a small varmint crowd that we sell to.
Okay.
But surprisingly, when it comes to the 22s and like our pistols and rifles, as crazy as it sounds to spend $1,500 on a 22 for it, we have a lot of like just backyard plinkers.
Yeah.
Or guys, they're not going to shoot formal competition, but they get together on a Sunday afternoon with their buddies in the backyard.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it becomes down to pride, or, you know, they may throw $20 on it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But competition takes over, the competitiveness in them takes over. And all of a sudden we'll get a lot of this. They'll call and say, hey, I was at, you know, my brother's shooting with a bunch of friends and somebody had one of your pistols. How do I get that?
Cool. That's very cool that they call up too. You might not know this, maybe you will. Off the top of your head, do you know what the youngest person is at like age-wise that shot one of your firearms? Because I know like 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, is there younger in there?
I believe we've had pictures sent to us of like a 4 and 5-year-old.
Oh, that's so cool.
Shooting. Yes. And so a couple of years ago, we started manufacturing our Summit, which is a straight pull. So it's built like a 1022, but it's a straight pull toggle action.
Yeah.
So that is like what we've seen, like some of these very young shooters shoot our stuff with.
Okay. That's so neat.
And the neat thing is, and this is what I love about being in business, is you get to know like their parents. So we'll get emails over the years of, you know, now they're 8 years old.
Yep.
And so we actually almost get to watch them grow up.
Yep.
You know, and even like on the competition side, that's what's fun is you start working with somebody at 9 or 10 years old. You watch them go through junior high. You watch them go through high school.
Yeah. And I'm still shooting like a little bit of Steel Challenge, or I go shoot the little Metal Madness. And I mean, blink, and these people are 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds. I'm like, oh my God, these were children. Yeah. And it's really, really cool to see that though, the family vibe. And I'm always wondering like what's going to happen next with these kids, because some of them are going to end up working in the industry, maybe being that professional, like paid shooter, or even being better ambassadors to the next group. And so many people, you know, judge kids to be like, oh, that's not safe, or they can't be safe. I feel safer on a range with those kids than I do with some adults.
Yes. So. Absolutely. And, you know, we have a story. There's a guy or a kid that I know that started shooting, and he was having a few issues in school, like behavior, and his parents use it as a, you know, if you stay on the straight and narrow, we'll take you shooting this weekend. Yeah. And he became a very accomplished competitive shooter. And, you know, I think it was just a matter that normal sports weren't for him, but this was his sport that he could dedicate himself to.
Yeah.
And it was worth, you know, not getting in trouble to go do.
No, I like that. I mean, I know like other companies too, they're like, hey, your kid will sponsor him, but they got to have a B or a C or something like grade wise. Yeah.
And that's what I always tell our shooters. I'm like, yes, we want to win. We're competitors. We're competitive people. But I would much rather take the person that finished second, that represents your company well, win or lose.
Yeah.
You know, than that person that finishes first. And like you talk about working in the industry, Colby Pavlock works for us.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect example. He grew up shooting. He's worked at a couple different companies. Now he works here. And it's awesome for us because it gives us the best of both worlds.
It does. And he's educated. That's the thing too with, I think, your people on teams. they're educated about the firearms and the difference with the 22s. I know that, again, we go back and forth on that, but people do have to educate sometimes on like why or what is the difference. And he does a really good job of that.
Yeah. He's very technical. Yeah. And he can back it up with his shooting. So it works out very well for us.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. So there's a couple of things that you guys do really well too. I want to talk about that, like influencers and team shooters and all of that. I think there's a lot of value that companies miss out on with finding the people that are good people, maybe not finishing at the top, right? I think the better companies are the ones that are finding the people that are friendly and share their firearms and can educate people on them. So like, what all do you do with your firearms as far as like magazines and events and influencers? Like, what does that look like?
So like, as far as how do we find them or develop them, or?
I think two things, definitely that point, but like, how can companies emulate kind of what you've done where it's like a different form of marketing or word of mouth or partnership?
I think one of the biggest things that, at least the way we've done it, and I'm not sure it's the right way, but
it's worked.
We won't just work with somebody on a transactional basis.
Yeah.
If it's not somebody we can go to dinner with.
Yeah.
And we've made some, we've had some different, relationships that we had. Mm-hmm. That there was nothing against them. Yeah. It just wasn't a good fit for our personalities and their personalities.
Yeah. On both sides. A win-win
on both sides. Yes. Yeah. And we kind of knew it right away. And when you start seeing yourself not wanting to fully invest in them,
yeah,
it's best for both parties to be like, hey, this isn't working out.
Yeah.
We wish you the best and we're never going to talk bad about anybody. But part of like and the other part that we want to do, like with influencers, whatever you want to call them, is we've had very good luck with the ones that we've worked with, mm-hmm. where we've been able to develop a relationship much more than just we're going to pay you this and you do this.
Right.
And we've dropped some influencers that did make it very transactional, and they lived up to everything we asked them to do.
Right. Yeah.
But it just it wasn't the right fit. And I think companies sometimes, because they have a huge following on Instagram or whatever it might be, they try to stick it out with them knowing it's not working.
Yep.
And I think the other thing that we've had to get much better at is be very upfront with whoever you're trying to work with and find out what they expect out of you.
Yeah.
And what you expect out of them.
Very clear expectations. I'm managing ambassadors and even like team shooters. I'm like, hey, from both sides, I don't want to come to my person I work with, the business, and be like, all right, this is what you got to do. Like, no. What's a win for you? What's a win for you? And then figure out in the middle. And if it works, then we're good.
Because if it wins for both sides, they're going to be willing to, we promote people that we work with above and beyond just for our business.
Yeah.
And in turn, might be at an event that's completely unrelated to us, mm-hmm. but somebody will start talking 22s and I'll get a text. They'll be like, hey, can I introduce you to so-and-so?
Awesome.
They want to learn more about your products.
That's awesome. I want to touch on something you mentioned, because I'm probably one of those people. I don't have a huge following, right? Like I don't have those clicks. So like when companies are like, oh, I don't want that person because it's under 10,000 or 100,000 people, right? But then you miss out on that quality person or that person that's growing or the one that is the most knowledgeable. How can that be a mistake sometimes? Just going after that numbers thing.
I think it's a huge mistake just going after the number. One, a lot of times if you watch those big numbers, the engagement isn't there as far as follow-up questions.
Yeah.
And I'll also look at, okay, so they represent certain different brands. What are their likes or what's their engagement and follow like on that? Mm-hmm. Or, did they have this huge following that maybe they bought years ago? Who knows what it is? Or because they dress a certain way.
Yeah.
So
we don't have that following. Yes.
Yeah. So we don't really look at like following.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we're aware of it. We know what it is.
Sure.
But it's not just our standard criteria.
That's a deciding a factor for a lot of companies. Yeah. And that's the biggest mistake. Yeah.
And I'll give you a perfect example that before we went on air, we talked about, we were at the Gun Collective event at Brownells. And there was a guy there that we've gone back and forth on Instagram, and he's always wanted one of our products. And he seemed like a super nice guy, but I had never met him in person.
Yeah.
And he said, he's like, well, He goes, what do you have against me? I'm like, I don't have anything against you. I said, I just want to meet you in person before we would ever work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can learn a lot about somebody at a social setting.
Yes.
Or even in a setting like this where you're having a conversation, much more so than a curated post that they can have somebody manage for them or whatever it might be.
And you want people that are genuine with products. I tell people this all the time when I get asked, how do you get sponsors? How do you do this? I'm like, well, or like, I want this sponsor. I was like, cool. Have you bought any other product? No. Have you tried any other product? No. I'm like, then how do you know if you're going to like it? And I mean, like, that's my biggest thing is like, hey, demo this first. Let's try that first. And if you like it, cool. You know?
Yeah. And even like on the competition shooting side, a lot of times, you know, obviously we watch what's going on at the range, but I'll watch during lunch or during, how are they interacting with people?
And ROs.
Yes. And yes. And how do they treat ROs?
Yeah.
And it's on that note, I will give our team, I always get credit for this, but I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
After about every match, when our entire team shoots, the ROs will email and say, your guys, you have such a great team. They shake our hands after every stage. They're very complimentary.
Yep.
And I wish I could take credit for it, but I had nothing to do with that. That was something that our young shooters started.
That's awesome.
And it just grew.
That's awesome.
Because all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 of them are doing it. So now the 4th one's like, well, I can't be that one that doesn't go do it. But I think that can happen so often at the range is, you know, a good example can go a long ways.
Yeah, 100%. That means a lot. Every logo, every occurrence, wearing anyone's clothes, representing anyone's brands. And I've separated one before when it's like, hey, I'm not a win for you. Like, it was a very religious company, I'll just say, and I'm like, I'm just not there, you know, and that's okay. But I want you to find the people that are, right, that fit your brands. And that was the only reason, really.
Yes. And I think that's a huge thing is when it's the right fit. If you have the right person that you're working with, I don't think it matters if you have 2,000 followers or 2 million followers.
Yeah. I think you're right.
You know, and especially for our like product line is because we're so restricted what we can do on social media.
Yeah.
Somebody with a couple thousand followers that can be at the range and is willing to say, hey, try this and hands them our pistol or our rifle.
Does way more than social media.
Way more beneficial than a curated Instagram post.
Yeah. Yeah. And not unfortunately, I would say, but the way of the future, I think, is ambassadors, word of mouth, shooters. Again, I know there's smaller niche industries and stuff like that. And then demos. So actually, let's talk about that. Before we got on, we were also talking about events that are changing. So the gathering event, the event that you just went to at Brownells, how are those events better for like if you had the public involved or more of the media people involved? Like, how is that beneficial versus just social media post or website or whatever?
I'll just speak for like our company. When the consumers or the shooters get a chance to try our stuff, that's our best sales vehicle.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's like anything when you can actually get your hands on it.
Yeah.
You know, you can pick it up at a trade show or the SHOT Show, but it's different than when you're actually firing it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And it, to me, like even we were just at the Brownells event, like you mentioned, but it allows for so much more candid conversation.
Yeah.
You know, even the people that say, hey, oh, I like that, but have you ever thought about doing this?
I was going to ask you how you take feedback into the next build.
Much better now that I've gotten older than I probably did 20 years ago.
Like ego type thing or?
Well, just, I shouldn't even say this, but I would almost get defensive because it's our last name on the product.
Yeah.
And I'm sure ego played a role in there, but yeah, you almost get defensive and be like, whatever.
Yeah.
But now I've learned that if somebody says something with feedback and it really stings, there's probably more credibility there than I would like to admit to.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think it's also just through experience. I've learned that, you know, people have given us ideas and we may not do that exact thing, but it might be a variation of that was spurred by that person's idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And you guys are on the ground floor too. Like you're at those events or the shooters are hearing it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I try to go to a lot of the events just because I enjoy talking to the end consumer because I get to hear both good and bad.
Yeah.
You know, I'll hear a story. Hey, so-and-so took care of me when I called your place. Or, hey, I got a problem I want to talk to you about. But either way, it allows us to figure out what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And I always go back to, at one of the SHOT Shows in the late 90s, our trigger guard design that we use on our rifles. Older gentleman brought this idea to my dad and wanted to show it to him.
Okay.
And it's the exact same system that we use today in our trigger group. And the funny thing about it was Dad looked at it, he goes, that's very good. Do you want to license it? Are you trying to sell the idea or what is it?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I just want to see it implemented.
Cool, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, I always go back to that because if Dad didn't take that 5-minute meeting, we'd maybe have never discovered to do a certain thing that we're doing on our trigger group today yet.
I love that. I love that a lot. Okay. Hard question for you. If you had to choose one gun of y'all's forever, rest of your life, what gun are you going to keep? That's hard.
For me, first I'll say it's a non-production one. It's one that my dad made from scratch, probably about 30 years ago, that has my family, all of my siblings and my mom and dad's name engraved in the side.
Neat.
So he did that one, and he did everything basically built from the ground up.
Wow.
So that'd be the one I'd keep for sure. But
that's fair.
Outside of that, it'd be one of our 22 mag rifles.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that was the first rifle we manufactured from start to finish.
Okay.
And there's a story that goes behind us doing the 22 mag was Dad had this idea for a while to do it because at the time, nobody else was doing a semi-auto 22 mag. And once again, at the SHOT Show, somebody looked at him and said, people way smarter than you have tried to get this to work and they haven't done it. So what makes you think you're going to?
That sentence?
Yes. And when my dad got mad, he always got red, right? Like through his neck right here. So I looked and he is like beaming bright red off his neck. I'm like,
oh.
And I said to somebody else at the show with us, I'm like, I guarantee this will work one way or the other. And it became this mission that he was going to develop it.
Yeah.
And looking back, I mean, we've made a lot of changes from that original design.
Sure.
Because that's the nice thing about being a small company is if we see something that we can change or implement, we do all of our machining in-house. We can switch on a dime.
I'll stop you there real quick too. I love that about these companies. No offense to the mass-produced industries, or like there were so many companies that were like custom and they saw the money, right? They're like, all right, let's switch and just mass produce them. And their quality is gone. And I'm like, I don't want one of those now, right?
Yeah, and that's, that goes back to the economy line. That's just not the way we're wired.
Yeah.
For better or worse, that's not how we're wired. And maybe if I was wired a little bit more that way, I could save a lot of money on other stuff that I buy.
Wait, what's your fix then outside of shooting?
I've gotten into watches, which is an expensive habit.
Okay. This is fascinating.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And my wife always gives me crap because she'll say, I always give her a hard time about spending money, but like hers are all very small purchases. And when I decide to buy something, it's
a few thousand.
It's much more expensive.
Yeah. Those watch parts are no joke.
But I think it comes from growing up and realizing there's a reason that certain things cost more.
Yeah.
But the way that the manufacturing goes into them. So now I'm just hardwired that's the way I'm going to be.
That makes sense. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, so if I was going to pick one gun, it would be what we call our deluxe 22 mag, just because of it was the first firearm that we manufactured start to finish.
Cool. That makes sense. So I know you have a couple of firearms in front of you. So for people watching, or go watch this, people, do you want to show the designs of these guns that you've got and how they came to like prototype and finishing and all that neat stuff?
Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what we call our Mamba X. And once again, this was kind of an evolution that for years we would do customized Ruger Mark IIs and Mark IIIs. Mm-hmm. And we always just kind of made a mental checklist and maybe sometimes an actual checklist of if we ever designed our own complete pistol, this is what we would do.
Okay.
So like our Mambas, even though we use like on these, the Ruger polymer frame yet for the Mark IV, And we do that so we can utilize their push button disassembly system.
Yeah.
But it's after that, all the internal components are parts that we wire EDM cut in-house.
Okay.
That have, once again, their evolution of 30 years of making those parts and refining them and constantly tweaking on them. Mm-hmm. But then the upper is something that we've designed, and it originally was called our LLV upper that we made for the Ruger Mark II and Mark III I think we started making those like in 2000.
Okay.
But there's just little things that we've incorporated over the years. Like on this particular model, I don't know if you can see that, but we've eliminated the Picatinny rail, and it's just drilled and tapped for just about every red dot platform on the market.
Love that.
And it doesn't do much, but it lowers that red dot to more simulate the same height as like what an iron sight setup would be.
Right. Yep.
So for the competition shooters, it's just a split second faster.
Oh, it way is finding that dot, and presenting it. Oh my goodness.
The one comment we get at a lot of events when people pick this up is it's a lot lighter than it looks.
Yeah.
Because it weighs under 2 pounds.
Yeah.
But like some of the little stuff that we've done and just things that we've learned is we use stainless steel, even though it's an aluminum housing, we use stainless steel barrels on. So we have a stainless steel breech, but then we take it one step further and we'll laser harden the breech.
Oh, okay.
Which guys will say on a 22, isn't that unnecessary?
No.
I'm like, well, it may or may not be, but once we discovered it's out there,
gotta do it.
We got to do it.
Yeah.
And well, you know how many rounds competitive shooters put through.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that we can sell one. And the other thing we do, I don't think we've touched on this, but if you buy a complete firearm from us, it's basically warranted for life.
Awesome.
So we have to build it so we don't get it back.
I won't name drop, but there's so many people like lifetime warranty. I'm like, that's because you got to send it back every year.
Yeah. So we don't want it back. We don't make any money on them coming back.
Right.
And like on the other thing we do is, obviously our bolt from a cosmetic perspective is different.
Yeah.
But everything we completely machine this from billet material, and then we apply a DLC coating to it.
Okay.
So once again, it's a very small thing, but it allows you to run it almost dry.
Oh, 100%. That 2011s need DLC coating.
Yes.
Magazines are coming out with are awesome. That's huge.
Because the big thing that happens is people think rimfires are finicky and they don't work and they're unreliable. So they just keep dumping more oil on it, and it just becomes a gummy mess. So these are all just little things that we've learned.
Yep.
And even like on the internal parts on that bolt, we use a A2 tool steel on the extractor and the firing pin.
Okay.
And we'll have people say, why don't you use titanium? And we're like, oh, that sounds good, but we haven't had good results with how it works.
Right. And that's what matters. Yeah.
Yes. So one of the things that I've always remembered that Dad told us is, because like I said, he was known for doing a lot of crazy designs, and at one SHOT Show, he was called the King of Weird, which still makes me laugh. But
I like that.
But like he would always say, he's like, all that comes second after performance.
Yeah. Yep.
He's like, you can have the most beautiful firearm in the world, but if it doesn't perform, it's a paperweight.
Yep.
And like, I'll show you this one too. This is something we just came out with. And a lot of credit to Colby. We were just talking about him. This is one of he designed pretty much this entire thing.
So cool.
But it's a takedown that goes between 22 mag and 17 HMR.
Wow.
But the neat thing about it is most takedowns that are on the market require you to twist or torque something to get it back. And it's always hard to line that back up.
Yeah.
Like on this one, if you can see it, you just push this button in and pull that lever down. And this slides out.
Like a shotgun.
Yes. And the breech on it, as you can tell, you can see the laser hardening, that little tarnish on there.
Yeah.
But, so it can only go back one way, the way that's designed. And once again, everything is hardened tool steel. So no matter how many times you remove and insert that barrel, there's never going to be an issue with it.
So neat. I got to ask, I'm nosy. I don't know. How old is Colby for coming up with all this?
He is, I believe he'll turn 23 or 24 next month.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah. So, and that was like his first, he was helping us with a few other things, but that was kind of the first one that was really his baby that he was able to work on.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, we're lucky to have him, and he's done a great job. And the interesting thing is, from a company side, he's one of the few that have actually come from out of our area to work for us.
Okay.
and we're a town of about 10,000.
Yeah, I was.
So it's really neat to have like so many people come from, people that I went to high school with that are now working here.
Yeah.
And the other really neat thing, at least to me, it's neat, is we have, a husband and a wife that both work here in different capacities. We have, brothers that work here.
Yeah.
Our production manager, her son works in the tool and die shop.
I love it.
So they don't work together, but it's
a family company.
It's a family company. So even though we've grown beyond where Dad would like to see, and as far as the family, just keeping it family.
Yeah.
It's still a very family-like atmosphere.
Yeah, it's Double Star. So they take care of me, and it's the same thing. It's there's brothers, cousins, husbands, wives, daughters, moms in like shipping and marketing. It's all over. It's amazing. And
it's great until you hire somebody and you're trying to explain how everything goes together, and they're like, wait a minute, they're
they're all connected. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I'm like, you'll figure it out. Just
love it.
Just hang out with us for a while. We'll get you all up to speed.
Right. Now, okay, for you, what is the coolest experience that you've ever had working in the industry, period? Like one for the memory books or something you'll never forget.
Oh, it's...
I've stumped him.
Yeah. I feel very fortunate that I've been able to meet like some very incredible people, like outside of our industry that are into firearms.
Yeah. I should have pre-prepared you for this.
Yes. I will say one of the coolest things we got to do is we built a gun for Dana White.
Neat.
And during COVID, we were able to go to the Apex Center at a UFC event and sit in his private box that was catered and everything.
Okay.
And I was able to bring my nephew, my brother-in-law, my brother, his wife, and my wife. So we were able to like go do something really cool, like as a group.
Yeah.
But like, for me, I just can't go and just watch how everything's done. I'll give Dana a shout out for a guy at that level. Mm-hmm. He talked to every one of us, treated everybody that he encountered.
Yeah.
Like they were lifelong friends. And even the neatest thing is I was talking to one of the security guards, and this is a lesson I learned from him. And the security guard said, it doesn't matter that I'm a security guard. He treats me the exact same way he does his higher level people.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, that's how people get to that level.
Yeah.
So
that's how people should be in everything that they do.
Yes.
So I used to surf. I had a different life when I lived in Florida. But I met my hero, and I regret meeting my hero. But I'm glad I met the hero to find out that that's the person. So
isn't it funny how that works?
Yeah, it's funny and it's so painful, and it happened in the industry as well. And then I found like the most amazing people too. But like you said, character and integrity and really just making sure that they're a good human being is really important.
And maybe that's the highlight is all the people that I've met, like were like celebrities or whatever.
Yeah.
Every one of them has been so awesome to talk to and get to know.
Good.
That I haven't had that experience yet of meeting somebody. I'm like, I wish I never would have met them.
Yeah, that's really good. It's awesome.
Yeah. Which I think I see a lot of that in our industry though.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of, I don't know. I'd like to think that, it has a lot to do with just being responsible gun owners that were raised a little bit different way.
Yeah.
And learn to treat people just a little bit different way.
More salt of the earth human beings.
Yes. And I know there's outliers and flyers with every group, but
I've never heard flyers. Okay.
Flyers.
Oh, okay. Flyers. Got
Flyer.
it.
Yeah.
Got it. I was like, huh?
No, flyer.
Yeah. But for the most part, they're hardworking, appreciative of our American rights, supportive of like the military, all of that.
Yes.
So that's true. Well, diving into that in general, how have you seen like our industry and our shooters and the young generations even like affect, our Second Amendment rights, and why are these like so important for us to support the companies that are, supporting our Second Amendment rights or keeping them alive?
I think it's probably more important now than ever because I feel like we are in a very strange time in our country of even like today, I think there was a Supreme Court ruling that struck down some additional firearm laws. And, they went back to what they ruled last week. It said, yes. What is it? There has to be history, text. What was the
I don't trust them. It just, they reverse and change their mind and then do that. We're like, what?
Yes. But basically saying they can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I wish that the one negative I do see in our industry is that it seems like we all sort of nitpick at what organization to follow.
Sure.
And I wish we could sort of come together more on that.
Yes. Yes. You couldn't have said that better. I talked to a lot of people about that. Okay. Well, again, competition world, but these people want to fight and these people want to fight. I'm like, hey, and I shoot everything. So I'm like, what if we all got along?
Yeah.
And we all were very positive speaking or supportive, like, hey, at least they're pulling a trigger. You might not like that, but they're doing their thing. And that's why, like, even if I don't care for a human or a company or whatever, it's like, but I want them here. We need every single person, every single industry person that we can have talking, speaking, and supporting gun rights.
100%. And I think, and I see this just because of the 22s that we build, is I think the one thing that we can do better too is bring people along slowly.
Yeah.
We've been sort of an industry or community that you're either 100% with us.
Sure.
Or get the hell out and we don't want to talk to you.
Immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, how about, okay, maybe they don't see everything that we see right now.
Yeah.
But maybe we can, slowly show them and bring them along.
And unfortunately, I've shared this too, is like, it sometimes takes an incident to occur for someone to come back or be curious about it. Like, I know when someone was near a active shooting, actually in a hospital, they knew, like, hey, Kenzie on Facebook, or I've connected with Kenzie. She's the gun person I know in my life, right? And they come and they ask the questions. Just recently, another wife was like, my husband has a gun. I don't know about the turn of all this politics. What are your feelings? What should I do? And I just educate, and I'm just here as a resource.
Well, and I think that's a credit to you that they see you as a resource and not somebody that's going to.
Yeah. Gun ho, got to do this. Yeah.
Yes. And just repeat the same old rhetoric of, like somebody said last weekend at the event we were at, us screaming shall not infringe at anybody is never going to change anybody's mind.
Nope. Or post on Facebook or whatever it looks like. It's
not doing
anything.
To me, the biggest thing that we can do is bring somebody to the range.
Yep. I've brought someone to the range in college, and I shared this recently too. And she was like, you know what, Kenzie, thank you. I don't like firearms, but I'm glad I know how to use them, and I'm glad I did it. And that was cool. And that was grad students, like, from different countries, and a lot of them loved it. But she was like, not for me. Like, hey, thanks for trying. Right?
Yeah.
That was cool.
And, I mean, yeah, we're never all going to agree. It's impossible.
Yeah, no.
But at least she gave it a shot.
Yep.
And I mean, I've done things that I went and tried, and I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. It doesn't mean I don't want other people to do them.
Yeah. It is really neat. Just being that resource. Like you said, being that resource, not forcing whether it's politics or your views or what you believe in, just being there, I think, because someday, truly, I believe it, something's going to happen. The world's going to change. And be like, oh, I have my eyes open now to what you've seen. I'm here. You're ready? Let's go.
I'm hoping we're closer to that time than it looks like right now. But I think you brought up a great point, is you educated them.
Yeah.
And that's the part that drives me crazy from a manufacturer side, is when I see people on, whether it's on TV or social media, and they're just putting out blatant lies about how our industry works.
Yeah.
I'm like, at least learn what the facts are, and then you can decide if you agree or disagree.
Right.
But you don't get to make up your own facts.
There's a lot that we do in our own industry that kind of burns ourselves. It shocks me. Yes. It doesn't shock me at the same time. I'm like, that wasn't helpful.
No. And I think sometimes that comes out of frustration.
Yeah.
But at the same point, it's not going to ever be the solution either.
No. So.
And I'll, even like with new shooters, a lot of times, and I've mentioned this on other podcasts, it always drives me crazy is a new shooter will call a magazine a clip.
Uh-huh.
And on social media, people will jump all over them.
Burn.
I'm like, how is that ever going to bring them back to want to shoot again?
It's the same thing with, I've seen it again on our own, but like pictures are like, oh, that looks like finger on the trigger, or if it's not, or it's like we're attacking. It's like, hold on, like this is a new person, or like you said, clip. Let's not chastise them or tell them they're stupid. Like people in our industry do forget where we started.
Yes.
I'm excited. There's a girl that I've never met. She follows me on Instagram, talks to me all the time. She saw that I was on a squad for North Carolina coming up with a lot of GM shooters. I'm not a GM, by the way, but she messaged me. She's like, I saw you're shooting that matchup. I'd love to shoot, or I'd love to see you. And I was like, and she goes, there's a spot on your squad. I was like, move squad. She's like, well, I'm only like C class and I shoot production. It's gonna be slow. I was like, girl, nobody cares. If they do, I'll kick them off our squad. I was like, come on our squad, hang out. We all started somewhere. Nobody cares about what you're doing. And if they do, they're the wrong people. But I'm so excited. So she switched squads in that moment and was like, seriously? I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And that, to me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Is, and from like a sponsor side, I get why they do the super squad.
Yeah. But it
doesn't help the sponsor. Because everybody in that super squad already has a sponsor. We're not selling to anybody in that group.
And what's your take on this? And you could disagree with me. I love teams, and I love when teams shoot on a squad together, but I don't think that helps educate anybody else on their products or whatever team shooters. I feel like they should be ambassadors in different squads, maybe one or twos, but not all together sometimes.
I would agree with you. And I know why they like to shoot together, because they know each other.
Yeah.
But also that can be a detriment, because that's who they're going to talk to for the entire match.
Whole match.
Instead of talking to new people.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's a comfort zone for many, but like I am that person. I push back, and I always have been. I'm like, I'm shooting on the squad. I'm not moving. Sorry.
And I think, and this is probably a whole nother rabbit hole that we could go down, but I think there's a lot that I would like to see changed on the way some of the competitions are ran.
Yeah.
And I know I don't have all the answers. I'm a big sports fan outside of the shooting industry too.
Yeah, same.
So I would like to see clear-cut winners. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we do too many participation trophies at matches.
100,000%.
When Colby comes back, or one of our other shooters sees somebody that works for us and they say, how do you do? Or how'd you do at that match? And it takes 10 minutes to explain what happened. There's no other sport that we do this in.
I agree. I won't say what competition I shot, but they gave out, when it's 1 of 1, you're the winner. I didn't earn anything or do anything. I don't want that little flag or the little.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know there's a fine line, because we want to encourage
new people
to come and all that. But I always laugh, because as an industry that seems to shun like the participation trophy,
right?
We hand out more than anybody.
A lot.
If like if you're a female and a junior and you were top lady overall, well, then you can't be top female junior, because that's going to take a prize from some. I'm like, no, if they're 13 and they won everything, give them everything.
Yes. I don't get that.
And the reason I get passionate about that is I think for the casual shooter to be able to follow what we do on the competitive side.
Yeah. Yep.
We have to make it more clear cut who won and who lost.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
Yeah.
I've seen the participation stuff. And
I've seen it like, when people will post how they did.
And you go look up practice score.
And I go look up practice score, and I'm like, they really did some math to get to show where they were at there. I'm like, that's genius.
That's the transparency that I will say angers me. Is probably not good, but like someone will post something and I'll go look, and they were literally last on the whole stage, or like this. And it frustrates me, because I know that that's like it's my industry. So when you're saying this and showing this, that's actually doing a disservice to anybody else and my industry, right? It hurts me.
Or they see a post from another shooter who says they, did something. You're like, how do they both, how'd they do this?
Mm-hmm.
Or I need to find those people that write those press releases and have them do mine when I shoot. Maybe they could get me a lot further up the ladder.
Oh, we could totally go down that forever. But yes, I agree on that.
Yeah.
And for people listening, if you didn't know, you can go look up practice score to call people out on what's true and what's not.
Yes. And I just think, with social media, we show so much there that if we could make it easier to follow, I remember being a kid in the 80s, and on American Handgunner, you would know who won the Steel Challenge.
Yeah.
There was one shooter, one open winner, and that person got the cover or the set, whatever it was on like American Handgunner magazine.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've gotten away from that, and it makes it harder from trying to grow the sport, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else on that?
Well, I could go forever, but the other thing I would like to do is I would like to see like more like matches, do maybe cash payouts.
Yeah.
To give it some more credit, because I know how much money, even sponsored shooters, I think the casual person looks at the sponsored shooter and say, well, that must be nice.
Yeah.
They don't realize there's still a lot of out-of-pocket expenses taking place.
Right.
Whether it be the time they spend practicing, travel, just a lot of different, it's an expensive sport.
It is. Yep.
So I would like to, and typically the people that finish, like, let's say first, second, and third, they're already pretty well sponsored with equipment. Yep. So let's reward them with cash and make it more attractive to try to get more people involved in it.
Yeah. So, and like for USPSA, I agree, because it was surprising to me where it's like, oh, we don't do high overall lady, but we'll do high overall or a lady in this division because there's 5 or 10 or whatever, right? It's the rules. So like this class is going to have 3, this one's going to have 1, this is going to have no trophies, right? And I don't need trophies, but I think you're totally correct in cash payouts. And the one year I shot my favorite match and they did cash payouts for all the history, they changed it to awards. And that was the one year I won. I'm like, damn it. Yeah, but I agree. I think like seeing, like, I get it, but seeing all those medals and like I see the kids that have 5,000 medals. We know who they are.
Yeah.
Are they sick of having medals? They could have a few $1,000s by now.
And I had Doug Koenig on my podcast a couple months ago now. It was actually before SHOT Show. And he talked about how winning a match and a cash prize kept him going. Yeah. He would have been out of the sport without it.
Right. Yep.
I don't see any of that really at too many other matches right now.
There's a few there, and it's mostly right now with multi-gun. Like I've seen the team matches and stuff like that, but they're, I don't want to say undisciplined or rogue, but like not under an organization, I guess.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah. So.
I like it. Okay. So switching gears here too, tell me about why you started the No Excuse to Miss podcast, how that came about, and what that's like.
So I started it. I wanted to start it probably about a year before I actually did.
Same. Yeah.
And a lot of it is, one, I'm just a big fan of podcasts.
Me too.
About 10 years ago, I went down the whole, self-development, self-improvement type, between reading and podcasts and all that different stuff.
Yep.
I got so wrapped up in it, but then I realized that a lot of people never really look at anything that way. So a lot of what we do on our podcast, we cover firearms and different things, but I also have a lot of people on that just have really cool stories.
Yeah.
That I've met through our industry or through events that, like I call them like fringe events that I've met different people at. And I think a lot of it is, I always thought for years that like our business was different because it was a family-owned business, that all this other stuff that was out there didn't apply to us. And over the years, I learned I was so wrong that now I've almost gone the other way of there's so much more out there that we can learn from.
Yes. From anybody, any level, any age, any education. I don't know if you read my description of my podcast, but that's what it is.
Yes. Yeah. And it, and yes, sometimes we'll cover, like competitive stuff or product stuff.
Yeah.
But I also like to just learn from people that I think are doing it at a very high level.
Yeah.
And if you look, I've had some people that have huge followings, but then I've also had some people that have very small followings, but I think their story's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. People like you don't know. Hey, let's listen to it. It's been really neat.
And I don't know if you've seen that. I'm sure you have. But the one neat thing is, sometimes you're doing it. You're like, I wonder if anybody's actually listening.
Yes.
But then you'll get an email or you'll run into somebody.
Yeah.
That'll say, hey, that really hit home or whatever.
Yeah.
And my very first guest was Brandon Lilly, who's a good friend of mine. And he said it best. He said, if we can help one person,
done. Yep.
He said, if you help one person with a podcast, you're doing more than most.
Yep.
And that completely reframed what I was trying to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of trying to please the masses or teach all this stuff, you just focus on what you're doing. Yeah.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah. It's been really cool. People will text me and be like, I've learned something in every episode, even if it's not something I thought I was going to learn about.
Yeah. So isn't that awesome?
Yes. And
yes.
like, the other one is, I know a lot of people criticize this. They criticize like USPSA magazine. They think it's dumb, whatever. Just yesterday, actually, I had a Zoom call with someone. They're like, I've read every single article of yours. Or I get texts of like, I learned something here. I didn't know that. And like one time too, I'm on top page of Google for another company I write with. They're like, I Googled how to shoot this match and I read it and I realized it's written by you. Yeah.
And I would have to imagine like you doing the podcast then gives them a frame of reference, much more than just what they can put somebody behind what they're reading in print.
Yeah. Yeah. That don't know me.
Yes. Which is part of the reason we sponsored it too we started our podcast was allow them like a curtain behind who we are.
Just people.
Yes. We're just, people that, enjoy having good conversations and, we definitely don't have it all figured out.
No.
So if I can learn from, somebody that's on our show or, and selfishly from a business side, it's one thing that we can do
that nobody else does.
That's not many people are doing, at least in our space, but it's not restricted in any way from all the algorithms and shadow banning and all that stuff.
Yes. Yes. And good on you. The other stuff is you've been consistent. Consistency, I think in anything you do in life, it pays off. And that's really well.
Yes. And that I remember starting and getting a couple episodes in, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if this is for me. And I talked to somebody and they're like, most podcasts don't make it 50.
Yeah. Some don't make it 10.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I got to get to 50.
Yep.
and the more I've done, the more I enjoy it. And I really,
it's addictive.
Yes.
If you haven't been on this end, it's very addictive. And then you realize, why do I go so long without video chatting my friends or talking to my friends? Like, why did it take a podcast? Do that.
And the one thing I've learned is like, I'll have such candid conversations with people that are on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, I barely know them. Why am I having such a candid conversation with them, but not certain people in
your circle?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, there we just talk about the same old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a conversation about this person, why she got into firearms because she was assaulted and, going down that entire road.
Yep.
I'm like, but over here, we're just talking about random stuff that, whatever. But no, it's been fun. And it, like,
you did it.
Yeah, I'm very glad I did it. Even if I would stop it and not do another episode, had some great conversations and I'm proud of what we did.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's like a legacy too for the next person to take on, or for like the like Colby's, right, to come on and maybe they're host a little bit, and never know. Be kind of cool.
And it's fun. And, I think our next step is doing what you're doing now with making sure we get it videoed and on YouTube and different stuff that way.
Have cooler behind the scenes stuff, your machines or how something prototypes. I mean, you've got a lot of neat stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think people understand either, like how much work like doing the podcast is. I know I didn't understand it when I started.
No. Yeah.
Even from like I don't have to do the editing part. Luckily our director of marketing, Chad, does all that for me.
Yeah.
But even just like the prep work and.
Oh yeah. I burnt myself out. I did a full year. And so now I've never taken a break. Now I'm taking a little break, building them back up, getting some more like good content together and re-release. I realize seasons are important. So
I've had multiple people tell me that
yeah. Seasons. I went ham. I did 74 episodes, I think now. And I was like, okay, I got to figure this out, because I was going to burn myself out, or, your schedule, my schedule is I'm never here. And like, it relies on me. So I've got to make sure I deliver.
And we've learned that too. Our goal was to have one every week. And I think we've missed 2 weeks in the first little over a year.
Yeah.
But part of it was, like let's say during SHOT Show season or whatever it was, you're on the road nonstop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not just going to do an episode for the sake of doing an episode.
That's how I feel.
if there's not value there, I'd rather skip a week than.
Yep.
And it's not fair to the guest either. If I'm putting a guest on, to give them 50% of,
yep,
what I want to do.
100%. Yeah. I love it.
So,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, I it's something I'm enjoying, and I'm glad we did it.
Good.
So, and like just today I interviewed, it hasn't been released yet, but I interviewed once again, somebody with not a big following, but Melissa McMinn, who's a firearms engraver.
Ooh.
She's one of 3 females that has the master engraver label.
There's only 3?
That's what she was telling me today, but it's just so cool to see like that side of the industry.
Yeah. Yep.
And especially because I feel like it's kind of a lost art.
It's 100% a lost art. My buddy Foster shoots shotguns, trap, and he's a world champion. His brother's a world champion, but his brother does engraving. I've been trying to get his brother on the podcast. He's very shy. I'm trying to get them both. But same thing. It's like, I see his artwork. I'm like, this is art, hand drawn. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She told me today there was one project she had that she had 120 hours of just drawings before she ever engraved anything.
Oh my God. So that reminds me of like Jesse James stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
and like she said, she was now her next thing is she wants to find how she can innovate like the engraving world to kind of get a resurgence in it. So it was, like I said, and without the podcast, I never would have had that conversation with her.
No, it's really cool. I'm going to listen to that one. I know that's rare, but like, I really do like connecting her with females, like females doing something different. That's rare to find that. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's those type of conversations that I really enjoy. And like I said, she doesn't have
a huge following, but
200,000 followers or anything, but she's doing really cool stuff.
Yep.
And doing it at the top of she's at the top of her game and the top of the industry. So it's pretty neat to see.
Yeah. I mean, what you're doing with your podcast too is telling people stories, and it's archiving that almost, right? So like her story is told, and that's probably affecting someone like, oh, they can relate to that, or they want to do that. Like they could see themselves because she did it in that footsteps. That's really, really, really important. Stories is how our entire world lives on.
Yes.
Entire world. Generations have been telling stories for years, and that's the impactful stuff that I have to teach people. Tell your story. Tell your why.
Yes. Tell your why. And that's like one of the biggest things I've learned over the last however many years is just building those relationships.
Yeah.
Is what it's all about.
Yep.
And to me, if you can connect people and build relationships, and build a good product. Yeah. A lot of the other stuff will kind of take care of itself.
It comes 100%.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I love that. So final general area I want to talk about is for people listening, that want to work in the firearms industry, and they don't have a degree, or maybe they do have a degree, or whatever that looks like. What would you recommend for them to get started and experience or get exposure, or try to like get in with a company? Like, what does that take right now in our industry?
I think at least the way that we've done it, there's certain parts of what we do where we did look at a degree, like for our tool and die guys. Yeah. They went to school and did that. But the people that actually do a lot of our like building of our rifles and pistols, they don't have. I mean, they may have degrees, but not specific to what we're doing. Yeah. But like, I think the biggest thing is be willing to work hard and take pride in what you do. Yes. And we can, the mechanical part, the rest of it, we can teach that.
Yes, but
we can show that, but we can't micromanage every single thing that somebody's doing and looking over their shoulder and be like, hey, that has to be something that they do on their own. Yes. So I don't necessarily, there's some great gunsmithing schools out there. Like if you wanted to do general gunsmithing, but I think if you want to try to get in with a company, be willing to do whatever they ask, like initially. Yeah. It may not be the most glamorous. It may not be what you want to do. But I feel like the owners or who's ever in charge of hiring will see a good work ethic and attention to detail.
And team player.
And be willing to start showing them and giving them more and more responsibilities.
Yeah. Yep. I wish more people like took like whatever brand they work at. I wish more people cared enough about that brand like the owner does. So like with my marketing, who I work with, it's like if something's said wrong about that company or something is off on education or whatever, I'm like, I care more to fix it than they do sometimes. But I'm type A, and branding's really important. But seriously, it's like, no, I really, really care about this brand. Like if you don't, then that's the wrong people.
And something I will advise, especially young people, is one of the first things we do, right or wrong, is we go to their social media page. And part of it is, one, you're going to be working in the firearms industry.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it. But two, we try to build a high-end, brand that, I just say, be careful what you post. And I've taught my own kids this, be careful what you post, because future employers will go look at that.
Yes.
And, whether they like it or not, if they're on social media and they're working at a company in some sort of way, they're representing that company 100%. And they're entitled to do whatever they would like.
Yeah.
But at times it can disqualify them from even getting an interview. They might be the best person in the world.
Yep.
But if, there's certain things like if I see, even if they think they're trying to be funny, but it's anything like against other like people.
Yeah.
I just don't have time for that. I mean, obviously racism, all that stuff I have zero time for, but
yeah.
If they're trying to air out their grievances on social media.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need that as a starter.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a lot. And says a lot.
Yeah. And even like back to the conversation I had with Melissa today, she said she had to do a lot of stuff and she maybe didn't necessarily get paid what she was worth on some of those early projects.
Yeah.
But she had to consider it. She was paying her dues to get her name
foot in
out
the door.
There. Yes.
Foot in the door. I undercharge myself for so long until foot in the door. I'm like, all right, got it. My value's there.
Yes.
And
I talked to a hunting guide last week and he said he worked 9 months without ever collecting a paycheck just because he knew what he wanted to do.
Yep.
And I realize that's not feasible for everybody to go.
Right.
9 months. But I always laugh because on the flip side, you have people go spend $50, $60, $100,000 to get a degree they don't want to do.
Yep. Yeah. Waste of paper these days.
Yes. So yeah, I would say like, watch your social media, but be willing to just have attention to detail and take pride in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Regardless of what they may ask you to do.
Yeah. Cleaning up toilets, sweeping floors.
Yes.
My parents are entrepreneurs. So
so you understand it.
I get it. Swept floors, mopped, put toilet paper in toilet. Like that's got it. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan. I've said this before, but a big fan of like First Form and what they do on the supplement business.
Yeah. I love that's what I use.
Yes. And Andy Frisella will talk that almost everybody that works for his company that is in an executive role started by boxing up product in the warehouse.
Yeah, and I love that everyone writes a little note and signs their name when they ship out product. And
if you ever go to their headquarters, everybody cleans up. Like if you go into the bathroom and you may get water droplets on the sink, it's on you and it's their culture that you wipe that up.
Yeah, adults.
It's adults, yes. Adults. And you're accountable for your own action,
Yeah. Yep. That's a great example. I love First Form and everything that they represent. So
yeah, and like he said, he's developed those people, or his team has developed those people into, the executives and the high level jobs that some of them have now.
Yeah.
But almost every single one of them, from what he has talked about, started in the warehouse, packaging up parts, writing the thank you notes like you referenced.
Yep. Yeah. Or we're a Legionnaire, or everything.
Yes.
Everything. So I love that. So what's next for Scott and Volquartsen Firearms? Anything you can share?
So the one thing we're working on, and this comes down to having time to finish it, is for about 10 years, we offered a centerfire rifle.
Okay.
And it was extremely accurate. It performed very well, but it just needed a long overdue update. Okay. So we pulled it off the market a few years ago because it was extremely heavy too. It weighed like over 10 pounds.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And we would advertise that, and then people would see that and they'd buy it and they'd get it. They're like, wow, that's heavy. I'm like,
yeah,
we did mention that, but it's hard. It was hard to actually see how heavy it was until you held it.
Yeah. Or convey that. Yeah.
So we're kind of in a redesign process that we're going to bring that back out. I'm not even going to put a timeline on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
who knows? And the
who knows?
Upside down with materials anyway. So.
Yes. And it's interesting because everybody always asks, well, you're going to saturate the 22 market or you're going to saturate the rimfire market. Mm-hmm. And there's still stuff that we want to do there that we don't have time to get to.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's good.
Right now, but I think one of the biggest things we're going to do is start doing a lot more in-person events, like demos where we can get out and meet with the consumers.
Yeah. Yep.
We talked a little bit before we went on. We're not doing SHOT Show again this year because I think it's better if we get out and use some of those resources to go do these events where we can go see people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like with like what Brian does really well is with Hunters HD Gold, obviously, but like if you put it on your website, scheduled events, tabling here, we're going to be at this competition, but it's open to the public to come shoot your products or whatever that looks like. Right.
And God bless him. I cannot drive as many miles as he does a year to get to matches. I would need to somehow budget a corporate jet if I was going to go to that many matches.
I hope he has the corporate jet one year because I was like, I'm in it for the long haul, Brian. I want to fly. I want to fly private.
But he's a perfect example of head down.
Yeah.
I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to get my name out there.
And he did it.
And I know he put out the 1 year how many miles he drove, and it was impressive.
That was a fun contest we did. Yeah. I think him and I, we grew up in this industry because I was getting started when I first met him in 2019. And we did the RO class together and we didn't really know each other then. And then I have seen his brand. I don't know if you read the story. I wrote the story of how Hunters HD Gold started and grew up.
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's neat. It's in USPSA magazine, but I'll send it to you.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I was there for that. And I didn't realize it along the way. Obviously he had made the product before I had met him, but then I put him on. That was what happened. And I was like, okay, done. He's like, no, we're on the weekend. I was like, no, here's money. These are mine. I don't need, I don't need more time. Right. And I was like, I've seen every iteration, the prototyping, the testing, the ambassadors. I didn't even know it along the way. It was cool.
And, that's something very, very neat. People will ask sometimes how far out were you planning or did you ever envision this? And I always say no, because when you're in the middle of it,
process.
Yeah, it's, I need to get this done today.
Yep.
Obviously we have long-term goals, but not, you're in the middle of being busy and it kind of goes with what Brian did. He one day at a time. And if he looks back 3 years, he's like, wow, I've come a long ways.
Yeah, when you put it all together of what you've accomplished, it's pretty impressive. And people get stuck at oh, I want to be here, but they're not willing to do the little stuff along the way. I'm like, hey, that little stuff ends up to be the big stuff.
Yes.
My whole life has been that. I'm like, that's cool. I get to do that now. Cool.
I heard a term the other day that I like called invisible progress.
Okay.
Where they basically you can't see results day to day.
Yes.
But you look back a year and you're like, I've come a long ways in whatever the goal or event was.
Yeah. Yeah. Weight loss or mindset or competition.
Yes.
Or whatever it looks like. Self-improvement. I'm a big reader as well. So nerd. But I am a lifelong learner. I think a lot of people get stagnant in whatever they do and they forget to keep learning in life.
Yes. And I did that for a long time. And it was about 10 years ago that I picked up reading again. And now there's probably not a morning that goes by that I don't sit down and read.
I love it. I'm a night reader, but I love it. Yeah. Have to. And people still read. And I'm trying to teach my nephews who are under 18, there's 4 of them. I'm like, guys, you'll be so far along if you just read a little bit more.
See, and I know so many people have gone to Audible.
Yeah, I can't.
And I can't even, I can listen to podcasts all day long, but if I'm going to read a book, I need to read a book. I don't want to listen to somebody read it to me.
100%. I smell, I want to crack it open, or even I've been traveling with an ebook reader, but I have the voices in my head and I don't want to hear that person tell a story. Yeah. Or I don't really listen sometimes.
I find out if I'm doing Audible, I'm trying to do something else at the same time.
Yeah.
And
drive.
I can't, yes. And I can't go back necessarily. And I want to reread that quote or that line or that page, whatever it might be.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I like that. Well, Scott, we've talked about a lot. Is there anything else that you want to touch on or talk about, or any other final tidbits you want to leave people with?
I think just like a bigger picture thing is, we kind of talked a little bit about where the country is and everything, that everybody can be an ambassador for the 2A.
Yes.
You don't need, everyone is one, either good or bad.
Yep.
Everybody's always watching. You don't need 1 million followers to have a voice.
Mm-mm.
You can do it with 10 followers. You can do it like in a local community. And I'm one that I have, I don't talk about it a whole lot, but over the last few months, I've been becoming much more vocal about it. And I think part of it is we've let the other side be so vocal about it for so long.
Right. And just kind of taken it, not really argued or anything. Yeah.
And I guess I've always, obviously always been pro 2A. I grew up in the industry, but more now where I used to try to avoid like a certain conversation.
Yeah. Now you don't.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and just argue for the sake of arguing. Right. But if I feel like there's a chance that I can educate somebody.
Yep. Step in. Yeah.
Yes. I've had an issue not too long ago. I was on a flight and there was a older lady that must have one of our company shirts on.
That's happening.
And she's like, I don't necessarily dislike firearms. I just don't understand why you can just order one off the internet and have it sent to your house.
Yay, we can educate.
Yeah. And I just said, that's not really how it works. I said, would you like to hear how it works? And she's like, yeah. So we had a conversation for about the next hour.
On a plane.
And she got off. She goes, I still don't know if I like guns, but what you said makes a lot of sense. And that makes me feel a lot better.
That's so cool. That's so cool, Scott.
Where, 2-3 years ago, I just would have put my headphones on and grabbed a book or done something and been like, I'm not having this conversation.
Yeah, no, I've gotten better about like asking, hey, do you want me to offer you advice or do you want me to tell you? Because I don't want to be like, I don't know what it's called, unsolicited advice, but I'm like, oh, hang on. And I've left business cards with people on airplanes from all over because of the shirts that we wear.
Yes. And I think like it can be done in such a good way that can do so much for the entire 2A community.
Yes. Yep.
But yeah, I guess that's my thing is people are always watching how we behave, how we act. And
every single person that owns a firearm and shoots or talks about it, or people know that they shoot, they are an ambassador, whether they're, like you said, good, bad, or ugly. Like you are representing the entire Second Amendment and the entire country when somebody knows that, and then you say something or do something or give them a bad experience. Like we can't control it, but that's why we have to remember that could be the newest person. Yeah.
And we have to remember that many on the other side are only looking for one slip up.
Yep.
One example that they can use.
Yes.
And they'll exploit the heck out of it.
For everyone. Yep. Ruins it for everyone. So it's perfect. Okay. Well, and then how can people find Volquartsen Firearms on social media and on website and your podcast?
So the podcast is the No Excuse to Miss podcast. It's on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everything. Our website is just volquartsen.com. Our Instagram is Volquartsen_firearms. And the crazy part is many times you have to spell it all the way out.
To find it. Shadow ban.
Yes. So.
And then yours, you have an Instagram.
Yeah. My Instagram is just Scott Volquartsen. There's no underscore, nothing. It's just all one, all run together.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
I'm glad you're on the other end of it too. That doesn't happen enough.
I probably talked too much. So if I did, I apologize.
I loved it. Yeah. For those listening, check out their firearms. If you're able to demo one, I'll say this too. Everyone that shoots one of Scott's firearms is friendly that I have met. Every single one of them would love to let you shoot their gun, look at their gun, ask questions about their gun. They have the best ambassadors across the nation. So, and
if they don't let you shoot their stuff, let me know so I can talk to them.
Let them know. Yep. Love it.
And seriously, if they ever have questions, because we understand our stuff is expensive and there's a lot of questions on why it is.
Yeah.
Send us an email and we will do our best to get back to you. And if need be, hop on the phone and.
Yep. And once you shoot it, you'll understand why. Love it. All right, listeners, tune in for the next episode of the Reticle Up Podcast. And thanks for tuning in to this special episode with Volquartsen Firearms. Stay tuned.
Thanks for listening to the Reticle Up Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Follow along on social media at Reticle Up or 3 Gun Kenzie.